All right, today we're going to dig into an idea that's so simple on the surface, but so influential that it completely changed the way we police our cities. And believe it or not, it all comes down to a single powerful image, a broken window. I mean, that's a pretty wild question, right? Could one little broken window actually signal the collapse of an entire city? That one small thing could just unleash a huge wave of crime? Well, that is the exact idea at the heart of the broken windows theory, and we're absolutely going to break it down. Okay, so to really get why this idea had such a massive impact, you got to understand where it came from. We need to go back in time, back to an era when a lot of American cities really felt like they were falling apart. I mean, just try to picture it. You're walking through streets covered in graffiti, there's trash everywhere, abandoned buildings. For so many people back then, this wasn't just ugly. It was this constant nagging feeling of anxiety, you know? It just felt like things were totally out of control, and everybody, from politicians to the police, were scrambling for a new way to fix it. And right into the middle of all that fear and decay, this new idea pops up. And it was almost beautifully simple. It wasn't about throwing more people in prison or getting more guns on the street. Nope. It was all about paying attention to the small stuff. So here's the basic thinking behind it. The theory says that all that visible disorder, it's a signal. A broken window that just sits there, unfixed, it's basically sending out a message that says, hey, nobody's in charge here. Nobody cares. And that message, it's like a big open invitation for even more disorder, and pretty soon, for much more serious crime to move in. And this one sentence from a magazine article back in 1982 by two social scientists, James Q. Wilson and George Kelling. Man, it just captured everyone's imagination. It was this perfect, powerful metaphor for how things could spiral out of control. See, the academic idea was that our environment sends us cues about how to behave. Our whole sense of social order comes from what we see around us. Okay, so let's walk through the chain reaction they described. It goes like this. Step 1, you get visible disorder. The broken window, the graffiti. Step 2, that starts to make people feel afraid. So step 3, what do law-abiding folks do? They retreat. They stop hanging out in the park, they stay indoors more, and that withdrawal, well, it creates a vacuum, a space where more serious criminals feel like they can operate freely without anyone getting in their way. And here's the thing, this wasn't just some dusty idea sitting in an academic journal. Oh no, this theory literally jumped off the page and right onto the streets. And the most famous testing ground, of course, was New York City, where it became one of the most influential policing strategies of the entire century. And it happened fast, like really fast. It started out kind of small, as a targeted program in the New York subway system. But then, by 1994, bam, it's the official citywide strategy under Mayor Rudy Giuliani and his police commissioner William Bratton. And after that, well, cities all over the U.S. started to copy what they were doing. So what did this actually look like on the ground? Well, it was a huge shift. Cops weren't just waiting for a 911 call about a robbery anymore. Now they were actively going after all of the small stuff. You know, the guys jumping the turnstiles, the graffiti artists, that kind of thing. The whole idea was if you restore order on the small level, you stop the big, scary crimes before they even have a chance to happen. And at first glance, wow, the results looked like a miracle. New York City got safer, a lot safer. But that amazing transformation, well, it came with a serious price tag, and it kicked off a huge debate that is still going on today. So supporters of the broken windows policy, they'll point to charts just like this one and say, see, there's your proof. And you can't deny it. The numbers for serious crimes like murder and robbery, they just fell off a cliff in New York during the 90s. For a lot of people, that was it. Case closed. A total success. But hold on. Look at the other side of the coin. During that exact same time, arrests for those small, quality-of-life crimes went through the roof. We're talking a staggering increase. So to get that big drop in serious crime, the police were arresting hundreds of thousands of extra people for things that a few years earlier probably would have just gotten them a warning. And that right there, that's the absolute heart of the controversy. You've got the supporters saying, hey, we made the city safe again. We took back the streets for the good guys. But then you have the critics, and they're saying, no, what you did was criminalizing being poor or being a minority in a public space, and it led to really aggressive bias policing. So let's dig into those criticisms a little deeper. First off, when you look at who was getting arrested, the data was pretty shocking. Black and Latino residents were arrested for these tiny offenses way more often than white residents. Second, people started asking, did broken windows cause the crime drop, or did it just happen at the same time? Some eponymous will tell you that other things, like the end of the crack epidemic, were the real reason crime went down. And this is a big one. This new strategy meant millions and millions of negative interactions between citizens and police, which just destroyed trust, and in some tragic cases, escalated into something far, far worse.
So where does all this leave us? Well, with a really complicated legacy. You can't deny the theory had a massive impact on our cities, but you also can't ignore the really tough questions it brings up about fairness, about justice, and about what the true cost of order really is.
But look, no matter what you think of the controversy, one thing is for sure. This theory caused a fundamental shift in American policing. It changed the job from being reactive, just answering 911 calls, to being proactive, trying to manage public spaces to stop crime before it even starts. And that way of thinking is still a huge part of how many police departments operate today.
And that's exactly why this isn't just some dusty old history lesson. The debate that broken windows started, it's the very same debate we're having right now about policing. What's the actual purpose of the police? What does a safe neighborhood really look like? And maybe most importantly, who gets to feel safe?
So in the end, the theory leaves us with this one really tough question. The whole idea is about creating order by enforcing social rules. But it forces us to ask, whose rules are we enforcing? And what's the real price we pay for that enforcement? It's a question that's still right at the center of the conversation about policing in America.